Welcome back to the American Superbike Show. I'm your host, Itch Turner, and this week we get to look ahead to MotoAmerica's Talent Cup opening their season this weekend as a support race to MotoGP at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. Before we get to the news of the week, however, I want to apologize to Jake Lewis. He's a fantastic rider to watch on track and my personal pick to win the Super Hooligans Championship in 2026, so it would probably be a good idea for me to not screw his name up again like I have in the last 2 episodes in a row. Since we will be talking a little bit about the Baggers World Cup, that also opens their season at CotA this weekend, I'm going to try super hard to not make that 3 shows in a row. But first, we're going to get to our news of the week, and it's a little bit of a light load of news this week. Our first item is the first round of the Moto4 Latin Cup was held in Brazil this past weekend. So I'm sure everyone saw, with the on social media and everything, with all the rain that came and just flooded the track, and they had that issue with the sinkhole that opened up in the surface. So because of all of that, qualifying and race 1 for the Moto4 Latin Cup ended up being canceled. They only had race 2. Pole for the race ended up going to Kensei Matsudaira. It was based on practice times from Friday, and he managed to take the start from pole, and the race got red flagged early also because of the weather, because apparently weather was a big issue for the weekend. But when the red flag came out, Kensei was in P3, and then also former MotoAmerica regular, at least in Junior Cup, Madhi Salem was also there, and he finished in P5. Let's see here. Real Steel Honda officially announced their 2026 lineup, and it is going to be led by Superbike rider and team principal Hayden Gillim, and he's going to have a new teammate for 2026 and 2025 MotoAmerica Stock 1000 champion Andrew Lee. He's actually a 3-time Stock 1000 champion, so he's going to be there competing in the Superbike Cup on a Honda CBR 1000 RR-SP. And then they're also going to have a 2-bike effort in Talent Cup, and it's going to be led by 2024 Nicky Hayden Horizon Award winner Derek Sanchez King, and he's going to be joined by Ian Fraley. And now that we are talking about Talent Cup, let's just go ahead and roll right into our preview of Talent Cup opening up their season at CotA. So remember like a week or 10 days ago, or however long it was, when we had the Dunlop tire test there at CotA, and there was only 8 riders there that were taking part for the MotoAmerica's Talent Cup class. And I said at the time that, we don't know how many people are not there. Well, I didn't know that we were going to have end up with a total of 14 riders. That's a pretty healthy field, especially when you consider it's still only year 2 for a spec class. So the 8 riders that we had at the Dunlop tire test, that was Ian Fraley, Reese Frankenfield, Bandit Landers, Ricard Herb, Nathan Guker, Derek Sanchez King, Kensei Matsudaira, and Nathan Betancourt. We also knew of 2 additional riders on top of that before the tire test even took place that were going to be competing for the 2026 season, and those were Jake Page and Sam Drained. So joining those riders now to complete the entry list is going to be Trace Boudreau, Rossi Garcia, Colton Schaefer, and Sawyer Lafayette. Now, when we look at CotA this weekend, well, actually, let's look at last year a little bit first. Last year, just like we are going to do again this year, Talent Cup race that took CotA twice. So that gave them 2 weekends with 4 overall races. If you take the points that were scored in just those 4 races at CotA last year and remove the riders that are no longer riding in Talent Cup, you would end up with something like this. It would be Sam Drain in the lead with 58 points. Second place and way back with only 32 was Derek Sanchez King. Now, the rest of the field rounded out with Rossi Garcia with 30 points, Nathan Betancourt 27, Kensei Matsudaira was 16, and Ian Fraley was 14. But you can just see there at the top of the returning competitors, which, in junior motorsports levels too, I still believe that first year tends to be a feeling out year, kind of getting your feet under you. And then in year 2 is where you see a lot of competitors take a big jump and start challenging at the front of the field. Well, of this group of 6 riders that we have returning that were managed to race at CotA last year, Sam Drain is kind of out there on his own with, out in front of the rest of them. So he's going to be somebody to watch this weekend. And he's already shown that this year that he's going to be somebody to watch because he picked up a Twins Cup win at Daytona to kick the year off. Let's see here. Of those 6 riders, only 2 of them that are returning managed to finish on the podium. I want to point this out as well. One of them is, of course, Sam Drain. He finished in 3rd place 3 of the 4 races that they had last year. The only other person to finish on the podium that is returning is Kensei Matsudaira. Now, Kensei last year, he did not compete in the full season of Talent Cup because he did not meet the minimum age requirement when the season started. The first race after he turned the minimum age of 14, I'm sure y'all can probably hear that. That's my dog, Ozzy, scratching. Okay, but that first race after Kensei turned 14 was the second weekend at CotA. Now, in race 1, he had a mechanical issue a few laps into the race and wasn't able to finish. Totally not his fault. But in race 2, in his first Talent Cup race that he was able to finish, he brought it home in 3rd place up there on the podium. So he's definitely going to be somebody else to watch on the weekend. And fittingly, that's probably where I'm going to go to pick to win the 2 races. I think Sam Drain is going to bring it home in first place and for one of the races, and the other one is going to be Kensei Matsudaira taking a victory. And you know what? Looking back now too, I picked Kensei Matsudaira to win the Talent Cup Championship this year, and I did that. Well, number one, he's really dang good. Not only, his one Talent Cup race that he managed to finish, he finished on the podium, but he's also won the last 2 GP 190 championships in a row in the MotoAmerica Mini Cup, which is the top level of that. And the only reason why the age was the only limiting factor that was keeping him from progressing up to Talent Cup until now. With all that being said, though, I also picked him to win this championship because I didn't really have a good idea who else was going to be running in the class. Now that I know that Sam Drain is back for another year in the Talent Cup Championship, I'm still going to stick with my pick of Kensei Matsudaira to win the overall title, the number 1 plate. But I will definitely say that I'm far less confident about that pick today than when I made it. All right, well, let's look at the weekend schedule. All these times are going to be local, so local to Texas, and it's going to be Central Time. On Friday, March 27th, they're going to have free practice 1 from 12:35 to 1 o'clock. And they're going to have free practice 2 at 4:55 till 5:20. And then at 6:30 at night is when qualifying is going to happen. So that wraps up the Friday with the free practice 1, 2, and qualifying. And then on Saturday, March 28th, they're going to squeeze both races into the Saturday. The first one's going to be held at noon, and the second one's going to be held at 5 o'clock. Both of them are going to be for 8 laps each. Now, MotoGP is still, they have the sprint races now on Saturday, but their overall weekend schedule is still something that's completely different from MotoAmerica, and they still very much go by the old school practice Friday, qualify Saturday, race on Sunday, and their main race on Sunday is a lot longer in the Superbike race. So all that conspires to where they try to have a lot of their support race stuff done, out of early in the weekend on Saturday and whatnot, especially because they also have all their pomp and circumstance of, pre-race and the grid and, the TV stuff and everything. And so all that conspires to ensure that nothing will happen on Sunday for the Talent Cup. Now, I don't think the practices or the qualifying are going to be streamed on MotoAmerica Live Plus, but both race 1 and 2 will be. And you know what? Yes, you can complain about what we don't have. Personally, I am very thankful for what we are getting out of this. It's a pretty hefty expense for MotoAmerica to be able to bring these broadcasts live on their streaming platform for their fans. Especially because in most forms of racing, there's definitely an attitude of, it's just a support race. I really am appreciative that MotoAmerica goes through the effort to make sure that I can still watch these races even though they are not part of a full MotoAmerica Superbike weekend. That's not a small thing. So thank you to MotoAmerica for putting on TV at all. With all that being said, I also though still have not seen any sort of schedule for the Samsung Fast Channel, whether or not these will be broadcast on there via tape delay, or if it's just, I'm sure it will be on there at some point. I just personally do not have any idea as to when. So that is the weekend coming up for MotoAmerica Talent Cup and opening their season at Circuit of the Americas. Let's talk some baggers, because while our bagger series won't be there, the Baggers World Cup will be making their inaugural race weekend debut here at Circuit of the Americas. And it's worth talking about because, well, almost about half the field is made up of MotoAmerica regulars. When we look at the entry list, we have Saddlemen Race Development with a 3-bike team, and it is going to be led by Jake Lewis. Hey, look at that. I said his name right. I didn't call him Jake West or James Rispoli. Yay, go me. But no, Jake Lewis is going to be part of the Saddlemen Race Development team alongside Corey West, and they're going to have the 3rd bike of Travis Wyman. And let's see here, Joe Rascal Racing is also going to have 3 bikes in the field. They're going to have Archie McDonald, Eric Granado, and Cody Wyman. NITI Racing, I don't know if it's NITI or Nitty, but they're going to be running 2 bikes with Oscar Gutierrez and Dimas Eki Pratama. And then the Parkingo team will be running Felipe Rovelli. So that is the lineup for the Baggers World Cup this weekend. When you start trying to pick, who's going to be the guys, who's going to win some races this weekend, it's hard to look outside of the Saddlemen Race Development team. Not just because I think they have the 3 best riders of the field, 4 best if you include, I think Cody Wyman would make the 4 best. And it's not just trying to be a MotoAmerica homer. They have a lot of experience on these bikes, and not just riding them, but setting them up and getting them to work, especially at places like CotA. So I think that those guys are going to have a step up on their competition, and I would look for the Saddlemen Race Development team to probably sweep the weekend. Let's see here. I will say, though, that 9 bikes ain't a good look to start the series. And typically when a series like this starts, you don't really have a whole lot of teams joining on during the season, once it starts, especially in MotoGP, the way they run things. Nobody's going to want to do a wild card round for the whole rest of the wild cards the whole rest of the season. So I really hope that the 9 bikes that start this year are going to finish the whole year, because otherwise, it could start looking a little, could be a bad look pretty early. I hope not, though. I try to remain positive about these things. I hope the racing's good and the fans love it, and just it's able to fill out the schedule that they currently have. Speaking of schedules, their weekend schedule on Friday, they're going to have free practice 1 from 8:25 to 8:45, and they're going to have free practice 2 from 12:05 to 12:25, and then qualify from 4:25 p.m. to 4:45 p.m. And once again, all these times are Central Time. They're going to have race 1 Saturday at 4:10 in the afternoon, and it's going to be a 7-lap race. And then on Sunday, they're going to have race 2 at 9:45 in the morning, which is also going to be 7 laps. As far as how to watch, kind of not really sure, to be honest. I did a lot of poking around trying to figure this out, and I don't really think I'm in, I might be just as confused as when I started. So I think it will only be available on MotoGP's Video Pass, but it could also air tape delayed on FS1 or FS2. And, a lot of this, man, when you just try to Google stuff now, you get all those AI answers, and those AI answers aren't all correct. So, I tried Googling it 2 or 3 different ways with just slightly different wordings, and I just got I have no idea. Zero clue. If I probably confused myself more than I helped figure out how to watch this stuff. Also not a good look for a series trying to make its inaugural debut in weekend. But I mean, even if you go to the Baggers World Cup, if you go to their Insta page on their where to watch post, or how to watch post graphic that they put out this week, it just says MotoGP channel. So I'm guessing that that's the video pass thing that they have. I'm not going to subscribe to it just for these races, but I hope I'm able to watch this at some point. We'll see. Maybe when we'll figure, I don't know. Oh, you know what? One more thing I want everyone to look out for this weekend, and I probably shouldn't have saved it for the end. But World Superbike is going to be at Portimao this weekend. And one of their support races is going to be making their debut, and that's World Sportbike. And in that class, MotoAmerica regular Julian Correa is going to be making his international debut out there. So best of luck to him as he takes on the world. And that's going to be our show for this week. It's a little bit shorter, only about 15 minutes. Not a whole lot going on, but at least we got some MotoAmerica action to watch this weekend. Until next week, everyone, just take care of each other.